There's 4 minutes in total for two.
Thank you, President Corla. Minister, hundreds of thousands are trying to get across the Mediterranean, not because they're chasing wonderful welfare benefits in Europe, but because their lives have been destroyed in the countries where they've come from. And sadly, we don't seem to have a problem with the fact that the US used Shannon as a military base to actually cause severe destruction in places like Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. We've refused to call Israel to account in Palestine, and it's interesting to see that of the refugees in the world today, 5 million are Palestinian, 4 million Syrians plus, Afghans 2.9, Iraqis 1.8. There's serious issues at stake. Obviously, those who have the goal make the rules, and Europe and the US, even though the riches might be unequally divided, they are rich in no small part because other places are poor, and the developed world has much to answer for in that area. But on the issue of Ireland's decision to take in approximately 300 refugees, that has to be welcomed. It's a small start. A couple of questions for you. Given that they've been sanctioned by the UN as being worthy of protection, will they go into direct provision, or will they be given proper facilities to participate in Irish society and look for work? Secondly, I know that there's a second stage to this, and there's an effort to redistribute many of the refugees who have already arrived in Europe, a lot of them in Italy and Greece at the moment. I'm wondering, will the Irish government take a positive approach to this and look to take in some of these people that have been redistributed in a couple of weeks' time? And thirdly, I realise there's an EU foreign ministers meeting on Monday to consider a proposal to launch some military missions on Libya to attack the boats that could be carrying potential migrants across the sea. Minister, I would urge you that our minister, when he goes to Europe on Monday, that he would advocate that this would be sheer lunacy. Most of these people are fishermen. The boats are involved in fishing. They get bought up overnight to carry immigrants the next day at a high price. And the idea of bombing them is crazy. We should never have agreed to the bombing of Libya in the first place. The NATO has destroyed the place. And the idea of another military adventure into Libya, it just doesn't make any sense. And I would advocate that the Irish government refuse to sign up to such an idea.
Deputy Clare Daly.
Thanks, Minister, I welcome the fact that we're taking 300 refugees. I'm sorry that it isn't more. I hope that the Minister and the Government will be proactively considering and arguing that we should take more when the EU moves to deal with these tens of thousands of people who are presently incarcerated in holding centres, particularly in Greece and in Italy. But I think the real issue really is what conditions will those people be in when they come to Ireland? Are we going to treat them as citizens with respect and dignity, or are they going to be thrown in to direct provision centres with other people who've desperately sought asylum here? And you see, I think we've looked at this debate the wrong way around, because this isn't about charity, it isn't about us being nice or anything like that. Refugees don't want sympathy or, tears or whatever. They want us to stop facilitating the reasons that make them refugees in the first place. And unless we address these issues, we're going to be faced with this crisis for years to come. And a report published at the end of April by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists revealed that the World Bank displaced a staggering 3.4 million people in the last 5 years by funding privatisations, land grabs, dams, by backing companies and governments accused of rape, murder and torture, by putting $50 billion into projects that have been graded the highest risk for irreversible and unprecedented social impacts. The World Bank has contributed to the flow of people across the globe. And I think if we're serious about stopping and assisting people, the first thing we could do would start dealing with the World Bank and the IMF and other such similar institutions institutions. The second thing we could do is stop backing and being complicit with NATO and US imperialism in bombing the Middle East, most particularly Libya and Syria and so on, which has caused and generated the beginnings of ISIS. This is a key reason why we have the flood of refugees and immigrants desperately seeking a future in Europe, because the US and NATO have destroyed their countries, their families, their livelihoods. So it's not about charity or us being nice. It's about us making amends, I suppose, in some ways for activities that we're complicit in by allowing Shannon Airport be used.
Calling the Minister.
Thanks, Dr. Hurlock. First of all, I want to thank Deputies Mick Wallace and Clare Daly for raising this matters here today, the issue of resettling refugees as part of the EU resettlement programme. I am speaking on behalf of the Minister for Justice and Equality, who regrets she is unable to be present for the debate due to her official commitment she had made before the debate was raised. I will, of course, bring the views of the deputies both to her and to the other relevant ministers before the meeting that's on next week as well, so I'll make sure that they're passed on and that the debate is read over as well. Ireland has participated in the UN-led resettlement programme since 2000. This programme is coordinated by the Office for the Promotion of Migrant Integration in the Department of Justice and Equality. Prior to Ireland's participation in this UN programme, Ireland had offered resettlement to groups of refugees, including Hungarians, Chileans, Vietnamese, Bosnians, Kosovars, and since the 1950s. Since the beginning of the United Nations High Commission of Refugees-led resettlement programme in 2000, 1,198 vulnerable persons from 27 different countries of origin have been resettled here. In general, the refugees resettled in Ireland come from Africa or from Asia. The largest communities are from countries such as Burma, Iran, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Sudan and Syria. Ireland is working closely with the UNHCR to respond to the plight of the most vulnerable persons displaced by these conflicts, and has played its part in the international community resettlement effort, and will continue to do so in the context of the EU response to the Mediterranean refugee crisis. The total number of persons displaced by the Syrian conflict admitted to Ireland under the resettlement programme from 2013 to date is 138 persons. This includes 31 Afghans and 4 Iraqi Palestinians admitted from Damascus in 2013, 90 Syrian refugees admitted from Jordan and Lebanon in 2014, and 13 Syrian refugees who arrived from Jordan in April 2015. Prior to yesterday's announcement, the Minister had already committed to resettling 100 refugees in 2015 and 120 refugees in 2016. The focus was on refugees caught up in the conflict in the Middle East, notably Iraq and Syria, including a number of refugees who have urgent medical needs. The EU agenda on migration, published yesterday, includes specific proposals on the resettlement of migrants in Europe, under which Ireland was expected to receive 272 people by the end of 2016. Rather than waiting until the Commission's proposals are discussed formally by the Home Affairs Ministers in June, the Minister announced yesterday that the Government has agreed in principle to resettle an additional 300 vulnerable people as our contribution to this European initiative. In addition, Ireland has operated a Syrian humanitarian application programme under which 114 people arrived in Ireland this year to join family who are already living here.
So Deputies Mick Wallace and Clare Daly again.
Thank you, Lance Corcoran.
Deputy Wallace.
Minister, listen, it's good that Ireland is taking in some people, and Ireland has been one of the better countries as well when it comes to aid in some situations of crisis where people are suffering badly. But I would appeal to you, Minister, that I think it is time that rather than Ireland, and it's good that we do it, but rather than just looking at the symptoms and trying to help in what way we can, surely it's time that we took on board that there are serious causes behind these serious crises around the globe. And these, as I said before, the migrants just didn't appear out of thin air. And the militarisation of much of the Middle East region has, and other parts of the world, has an awful lot to do with the efforts of so many hundreds of thousands of migrants to get across the Mediterranean. And we need to take this on board. And I would appeal to the government to actually think again about the fact that we allow arms and munitions to come through Shannon, which help to cause so much of this misery. War is responsible for a huge portion of the displacement that's taking place. And Ireland could play a very positive role by actually standing up and saying nobody, not just the US, but no country should be allowed to bring any arms or munitions or troops through Ireland to any war front, because war does not create peace.
Thank you.
It creates destruction. Please, Minister, I appeal that the government take a fresh look at how we are allowing Shannon to be used.
Good morning, Deputy Clare Daly, to conclude.
I think we have to stand back and look at the horrendous circumstances that forces individuals and families to make the treacherous journey in order to try and seek a better life in Europe. And it really doesn't bear thinking about. People give their life savings, they entrust their children essentially to pirates and put them on a ship that they know there's a good chance won't make it to the other side. I mean, it is just beyond belief. And so in that context, I'm very glad that the government is resettling people. I really am. I'm sorry it isn't more, and I hope it's more out of the next batch. But the key issue here really isn't about resettling refugees. It should be about stopping them being made refugees in the first place. And the reason why they're being driven from their own countries, where they share their own family, their own language, do you think they really want to come here? Is because they're being left with no future, where they should be living, surrounded by the people and the life circumstances that they know best. And that's because of economic pillage or because of military devastation. And I just want to echo the points that we are complicit in that by allowing Shannon in part of that process. And there's no doubt in my mind that the US military that have transited through Shannon and engaged in the likes of activities in Libya and in Syria are partly responsible for the reason why so many people now are ending up in this devastating situation.